Air Canada braces for impact this Friday night. Hundreds of flights cancelled and arbitration rejected as flight attendants prepare to strike.
Whatever needs to be done, we will do to get back talking.
Travelers left in the lurch as Canada's largest airline faces a full shutdown. Trump and Putin face-to-face in Alaska. Will this pivotal meeting pave a path to peace in Ukraine? Plus, seeking closure.
We should have bought that murderer out here.
The message from a murder victim's family to a Winnipeg serial killer. And he's gonna need a bigger board.
I was like eye level with its eye.
A Nova Scotian's up-close encounter with the most feared shark in the ocean.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Carolyn Jarvis.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Air Canada is now just hours away from a shutdown unless the airline and its flight attendants can reach a last-minute deal in their labor dispute. The union is asking the airline to resume good faith bargaining and urge the federal Minister for Jobs and Families not to intervene. 500 flights are expected to be cancelled by the end of the day. Air Canada Express flights run by Jazz and PAL Airlines will operate, but only serve about 20% of passengers. And come tomorrow at 1 a.m. Eastern, flight attendants are poised to walk off the job. Thousands of travelers are scrambling to deal with the disruption. We'll get to your rights as a passenger in just a moment. But first, to Neetu Garcha on the dispute deadlock.
Rain falls on a grounded Air Canada jet while a WestJet plane glides by, a snapshot of a national travel crisis waiting to take off.
If you don't have a confirmed booking, don't come to the airports.
We do have extra staff, both in the terminal and in our operations today.
Airports are busy as the union, representing more than 10,000 flight attendants, has rejected Air Canada's request for binding arbitration, leaving tens of thousands of passengers in limbo.
Hopefully, we go home and not be stuck at the airport.
Hotels aren't cheap. I looked, and the cheapest one I got was like $300.
In a statement, Minister Patty Hajdu's office said it's strongly urging the parties to work with federal mediators, adding this dispute is causing a great deal of anxiety and frustration to Canadians. Right now, the only focus should be on getting a deal.
I'm not mad at them for what they are doing, so, it's the part of life.
Concern, yes, I just want to get to my next destination, that's all.
Air Canada started a gradual shutdown of overseas flights Thursday ahead of a system-wide shutdown 1 a.m. Saturday.
We are working with many airlines, more than 200 globally, to rebook customers onto other flights.
The union says its members have been locked in a 10-year contract that's forced many to work below the poverty line. The union secured an overwhelming 99% strike mandate and says the fight centers around compensation for hours worked on the ground.
We feel that it's a moment to change the industry and the world.
Both sides have accused each other of walking away from the table.
Whatever it takes, tell me, I will do it. We just want to get back to the table.
For now, there's no deal, soon to be no flights, and still no sign of a last-minute breakthrough. And with one of the busiest travel weeks of the year at stake, the cost to Canadians and Canada's dominant airline could be massive. Neetu Garcha, Global News, Vancouver.
As the hours tick down to a potential strike, thousands of Air Canada passengers are scrambling to change their travel plans and rebook on other airlines. If you're among them, you are entitled to some level of reimbursement, but not as much as you might think. Heather Yourex-West breaks down the rights of passengers during an airline strike.
We have now packed because we thought we were going on a trip.
What was supposed to be the realization of their lifelong dream, now caught up in an Air Canada nightmare.
We bought the catamaran in Grenada, and the plan is to head there, well, hopefully Sunday.
After selling their home, cars, and most possessions to chase a life at sea, this Calgary family says they're just praying their Air Canada flight goes ahead. Their situation made more complicated because they're traveling with their pet. Air Canada is the only option.
I just wanted to update you on the future travel credit.
Travel agent Anita Gibault says it's been an emotional few days, helping clients decide whether or not to proceed with vacation plans.
We're getting limited information from Air Canada, and being at peak travel season, it is hard to try and find alternate arrangements for people.
We had a flight and it was canceled last night. about 7 o'clock last night, so we rebooked with WestJet.
Flights cancelled now before a strike or lockout are considered preemptive. Air Canada is responsible for meals, accommodation, and a lump sum compensation of $1,000 based on the length of their delay. But once job action is underway, the cancellation is considered reactive.
Unfortunately, under Canada's broken regulations, there is no compensation owed if it is a reactive cancellation. That's a major loophole. It should have been fixed long ago.
That means no meals or accommodation vouchers. But even during a strike, Air Canada must still offer a refund or rebook passengers on another airline for free. The only caveat if, like this Calgary family, you're traveling outside of Canada. Air passenger rights advocate Gabor Lukács says to keep all your expense receipts. You may be able to seek reimbursement under an international travel treaty, though in some cases that may require a trip to small claims court. Heather Yourex-West, Global News, Calgary.
And there was no bargaining today between Canada Post and the union representing 55,000 postal workers. Both sides say talks are delayed due to the availability of federal mediators. They are now scheduled to meet on Wednesday. In Anchorage, Alaska, a high-stakes meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin has just wrapped up. Putin is the first Russian president to set foot in Alaska, once part of Russian territory. Today, the focus was on Russia's attempt to redraw the map of Europe with its war in Ukraine. The two leaders met for about 2 hours and then held a news conference. Jackson Proskow joins me now. Jackson, what did they say?
Well, Carolyn, it doesn't seem like they got very far in their talks. Both leaders did try and put a positive spin on things, but this was far shorter than expected. The Kremlin had said they thought talks would go for 6 or 7 hours, not the 2 that this actually lasted. And when the two leaders came out, it was actually Vladimir Putin who spoke first. Trump then openly said there is no deal until there's a deal. Though he did say he would probably see Putin again very soon, so perhaps this is some sort of starting point for future talks. But perhaps the biggest tell that this did not go well is that neither man took any questions. Trump, without directly saying so, essentially acknowledged the failure of his big promise, which was to reach a ceasefire. There is no deal there. And for his part, Vladimir Putin was very clear that his base position on the war has not changed. He's still talking about ending what he calls the root causes of the conflict and addressing Russia's security concerns. That's what he's been saying since before the war even started, so no change in position from him. He did, however, express optimism that there might be some sort of a path forward in terms of rebuilding relations and trade with the United States. Take a listen to how both men summarized the conversation.
I'm going to start making a few phone calls and tell them what happened, but we had an extremely productive meeting and many points were agreed to. There are just a very few that are left. Some are not that significant. One is probably the most significant, but we have a very good chance of getting there. We didn't get there, but we have a very good chance of getting there.
In order to make the settlement lasting and long-term, we need to eliminate all the primary roots, the primary causes of that conflict. And we've said it multiple times, to consider all legitimate concerns of Russia and to reinstate a just balance of security in Europe and in the world.
Okay, so Jackson, it's not sounding like a lot of new details are coming out of this meeting, at least not at this point. So I know this is a bit of a crystal ball question, but what could we expect in terms of next steps?
Yeah, I think we essentially need to see how both Trump and Putin react over the next few days, whether Russia changes its tactics in Ukraine. We also need to wait and see what the reaction is like from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who Trump says he will be phoning tonight. Trump had in some ways set expectations low going into this, but also said he thought a ceasefire was possible. He had suggested something like a 75% chance of success. And we know with Trump that media coverage can often change his sort of take on things. And so, we have to see how media coverage about the lack of a deal shapes Trump's perspective here. By the way, we should say, Carolyn, that when the two leaders talked about meeting again soon in the future, Putin actually cracked a joke that meeting should take place in Moscow. Trump didn't exactly take the bait, said he'd get in a lot of trouble for that. But look, bottom line is no deal and no sign that a deal is anywhere imminent tonight.
And we continue to wait. All right. Thank you, Jackson Proskow in Washington for us tonight. There's breaking news out of Nova Scotia. A helicopter fighting the wildfires in the Annapolis Valley has crashed. A spokesperson with the province says the crash happened in shallow water. The pilot was quickly rescued by firefighters nearby and was said to be conscious before being taken for a medical assessment. More than 100 homes have been evacuated as the Long Lake wildfire continues to grow near West Dalhousie. The fire, caused by lightning earlier this week, is now more than 4 square kilometers. Although scattered showers could bring some wildfire relief in the coming days, officials warn more lightning could ignite new fires in the region. In Newfoundland and Labrador, families forced from their homes in Paradise have returned after a wildfire near St. John's triggered evacuations earlier this week. The Paddy's Pond fire is still active. One of the blazes currently being tackled with help from members of the Canadian Armed Forces. Residents who are returning are advised to be ready to leave again at a moment's notice. It's one of 4 out-of-control fires in the province. The largest, near Kingston, has reportedly destroyed an elementary school, along with an estimated 100 homes and structures in the region. Nearly a year after serial killer Jeremy Skibitsky was sentenced for murdering 4 First Nations women, a Manitoba court is taking the rare step of hearing new victim impact statements. The family of Skibitsky's first victim, Ashley Shingoose, previously only referred to as Buffalo Woman, spoke to a special hearing today meant to complete the court record, honor her life, and advance reconciliation. Melissa Ridgen was inside the courtroom. Melissa.
Carolyn, since this all began in 2022 when police charged Jeremy Skibitsky with 4 counts of first-degree murder, Ashley Shingoose's parents were sure his one unidentified victim was their loved one. But it wasn't until after his conviction that Skibitsky came forward to police to help them identify her. After 3 years on the sidelines of all of this, her family finally got their time in court.
It's a good day. We did it.
Albert and Teresa Shingoose described a kind, loving daughter and mother of 3 who struggled with addiction on the streets of Winnipeg. She was one of 4 First Nations women Skibitsky admitted to police he lured from homeless shelters back to his apartment to kill. He pleaded not criminally responsible but was found guilty and is serving 4 life sentences in an Alberta prison. The killer chose not to attend the special hearing.
They should have brought that murderer out here to listen to my talking, to listen to me, how I feel. That's what I wanted. The court failed me on that one.
Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, and Rebecca Contois were the 3 known victims. They'd been strangled or drowned and dumped in Winnipeg area landfills. Police believe Shingoose is at the same one where Contois' partial remains were found. Harris and Myron were recovered earlier this year after a long, ugly battle to search for their remains. While the Shingoose family didn't get to participate in the trial, one nightmare that they won't have to endure that the other families did, they won't have to fight for a landfill search. Preliminary work is already underway to find Ashley Shingoose and to bring her home to rest. Carolyn.
Melissa Ridgen in Winnipeg, thank you. Leaders of the Shishal Nation on BC's Sunshine Coast have found an additional 41 unmarked graves on the site of a former residential school. The nation says a team has been scanning the area around the former St. Augustine's residential school site for the last 18 months at locations identified through interviews with survivors. The discovery brings the number of suspected graves at the site to 81 after initial findings that were announced in 2023. Deadly floods in South Asia coming up. The torrential downpours that have killed hundreds and displaced thousands. Plus, kicking the can. Why a global summit to address plastic pollution keeps failing to find a solution. More than 200 people have died in flash floods triggered by torrential rain in Indian-administered Kashmir and Pakistan. Gushing water has swamped several areas, making rescues difficult. Elsewhere, belongings caked with mud littered the streets where the water has receded. Nearly 2,000 people have been forced to flee in the past 24 hours. After nearly 2 weeks of negotiations, talks to curb plastic pollution with a legally binding treaty have collapsed. More than 100 countries gathered in Geneva demanding limits on production and toxic chemicals, but oil-producing nations wanted to focus on recycling and waste management instead. Vincent McAvenny breaks down the impasse and the risk of yet another failed round of plastic talks.
Since their invention in 1907, plastics have been used for everything from cutlery to car parts. But all of that plastic is set to stick around for centuries and is now everywhere, including in our soil, rivers and oceans. Broken down into tiny particles known as microplastics, they enter the food chain. Microplastics and chemicals associated with them are harmful to human health and the planet. One of the many reasons why representatives from 185 nations have been holding talks in Geneva to try to reach a landmark treaty to end plastic production. But it ended the same way as the previous 5 rounds of talks: deadlock and failure.
We did not arrive where we wanted to arrive. However, it is clear that we are living in an era of significant political complexity.
While around 100 nations, including Canada and the EU bloc, want curbs on plastic production, oil-producing states led by Russia and Saudi Arabia and some developing countries are among those who insisted the focus should be on the management of plastic waste instead.
We are deeply troubled and find it extremely problematic that in a process where we are meant to find a legally binding instrument, the discussion centered around a certain avenue and did not include recycling and waste management.
Researchers warn that this approach is fundamentally flawed. Global recycling rates are estimated at only about 10%, with limits on how far that can rise.
More people are suffering from the scourge of plastic pollution. We don't have any other choice but to agree global rules that protect human health and the environment over short-term interests of the petrochemical sector.
Another round of talks will be held at some point. Around 500 million tons of plastic are expected to be manufactured this year. Without an agreement, that's only set to rise. Vincent McAviney, Global News, London.
Ahead, the world marks the official end of the Second World War 80 years ago today. In Ottawa and around the world today, ceremonies are taking place commemorating the end of the Second World War 80 years ago. Descendants of war veterans and members of the public attended today's ceremony at the National War Memorial in the capital. August 15th, 1945 is recognized as the official end of the conflict. While victory in Europe was declared months earlier, the war in the Pacific raged on until Japan surrendered, days after the atomic bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. In Britain, King Charles, Queen Camilla, and Prime Minister Keir Starmer laid wreaths at the National War Memorial. Dozens of buildings and locations across the country were illuminated to mark the anniversary. He went out for a serene paddle on the Atlantic. What he wasn't expecting was a run-in with a great white. The close encounter, next.
We're going now.
A triumphant celebration in northern Quebec today as students from Concordia University made history, launching the most powerful rocket engine made by students. The rocket, called Star Sailor, took off at 5:34 a.m., the culmination of more than 7 years of work. The team is now gathering data on its trajectory to see how far it reached. This is the first attempted space launch in Canada since 1998. Well, shark sightings aren't unheard of in Nova Scotia, especially in summer months when sharks migrate north as the waters warm. They're primarily in search of gray seals. But a paddleboarder, whose board may have looked like one, got an up-close and personal encounter recently. Ella MacDonald has the story and, spoiler alert, no one was hurt.
Kent Walsh says his recent encounter with a great white shark was a great big shock.
It happened really, really fast, but kind of initially assumed that I'd hit something, I guess. So it kicked the board out, and I was stroking on that side, and I fell into the water.
Walsh was paddleboarding Tuesday evening in the ocean off Cherry Hill Beach, but his serene paddle was rudely interrupted when a shark swam up from the depths, grabbing hold of his board.
I was like eye level with its eye because I was in the water. So definitely like its big, deep, like unblinking eye, just kind of staring back. And then, like I said, because of the flotation of the board, like its whole back was out of the water, the whole dorsal fin and everything was just like all right there.
He sprung into action, hitting the shark on the head with his paddle. It eventually let go of the board, and Walsh was able to get back to shore unscathed.
The sea is not teeming with sharks that are dying to eat you. Most of these, I think, are accidents, and the surfboard is a classic accident, right? That's a come from below, look at a profile, oh, that looks good, that looks sort of seal-like or dolphin-like.
After some bite mark analysis, marine veterinarian Harvey Clark confirmed the shark was a great white, around 3 meters long. The shark was likely a juvenile, which are becoming more and more common in maritime waters as the seal population booms. But both men agree this incident should serve as a warning to others.
Don't stop using the sea, but exercise situational awareness.
Ella MacDonald, Global News, Cherry Hill, Nova Scotia.
And that is Global National for this Friday night. I'm Carolyn Jarvis. Your Canada is going global this week. We're showing pictures of Canadian pride we've received from all over the world. Tonight, we're showcasing Oslo, Norway, La Cala del Moral, Spain, and near San Felix, Panama. Thanks for watching. Hope you'll join us again tomorrow. Have a great night.